Thank you, and good night. Hope you enjoyed the tour. Did you hear me at the back? Remember to lock all your doors and windows this evening. Sweet dreams.
Oh, Adam, I'm a big fan. Could you sign a book for me?
Certainly, yes. Adam Lyle, deceased. There we are. Fine night for a tour. Don't I know you from somewhere? Oh, there you are. Monk, have you by any stretch of your little imagination remembered the opening titles? No, Monk, enough of your high shenanigans. Conjure up the correct board, please. He's just like a small, troublesome child. That's better. Now, come on. Places to go, people to see, ghost stories to embellish. This statue, Monk, is the oldest lead equestrian statue in Great Britain. What an exhilarating snippet from the anecdotal stakes. That's one to whisper around the cloisters late at night, Monk. Sir Walter Scott. You know Sir Walter Scott? Books, that's right, yes. Ivanhoe, the Waverley novels, Heart of Midlothian, Rob Roy. Oh, could go on for hours. Well, the esteemed Sir Walter, fascinated by the supernatural, describes a ghost in this very area. It's a grizzled, grey-bearded Highlander with leathery complexion, crooked with age. Breeches and coat blood-brown in colour, wielding in one withered hand a Lochaber axe. This antiquated figure creeps in phantom form, or so I've been told, around this very statue. Oh, sounds a wee bit far-fetched to me, that one. The Heart of Midlothian marks the condemned cell of the old Tolbooth prison. Today it brings good luck to all who spit on the stone, although some say it's not so lucky on a windy night. Ghosts of Scotland. Fables, phantoms and folklore. What is a ghost? And how could we possibly render the Scottish phantoms justice in one particular programme? Well, the dictionary definition of ghost is the disembodied spirit of a dead person supposed to haunt the living. And the description of a ghoul is someone interested in morbid or disgusting things. That's definitely you, Monk. Many apparitions are bound to our earth by strong emotions such as love, fear, or guilt. Obviously, I can only regale and embroider a selection of supernatural tales, but rest assured, rigid scientific methods were employed to exhume even the merest mortifying morsel. The psychic formula is known in Scotland as my favourite stories. Let's start our journey in Edinburgh, where we've chanced upon two very important photographs of ghosts. Oh, that's one of me. Adam Lyle, deceased, executed in Edinburgh's Grassmarket on the 27th of March, 1811, for highway robbery. I returned in 1985 to this mortal plane to nightly navigate visitors and locals alike around Edinburgh's Old Town. The second snapshot was taken by a Mr. David Knott from London, way back in 1987. It seems to show a small girl on tiptoe gazing through a window on the Castle Hill. Upon analysis, a lady from the Scottish Society for Psychical Research concluded the image was that of a man with no head. Judge for yourself. Often ghost stories are very short. Take George Mackenzie's mausoleum in Greyfriars Cemetery as an example. The journal reads, "The mausoleum is said to be haunted." That's short, and doesn't leave us with too many clues to whose unearthly being it might be. It could be Sir George, of course, known as Bloody Mackenzie, as he brought many Covenanters to the scaffold in his capacity as King's Advocate. Many years ago, my brother John and I would venture up to the mournful mausoleum and shout through the keyhole,
"Bloody Mackenzie, come out if you dare, lift the neck and draw the bear."
It is not uncommon to have children involved in lifeless encounters. Deep beneath the capital's city chambers lies the long-lost alleyway of Mary King's Close. Used as a foundation to the city's Royal Exchange, the small sloping street today lies underground. In 1645, the Black Death swept through this narrow enclosure, decimating the local population. Many visitors have stepped down this historic lane, including in 1993 a Japanese medium with her very own film crew. In a small room adjacent to the main alleyway, the Oriental psychic claimed not only to see the ghost of a small girl, but to speak to her too. The girl apparently said that the marks on her face were a result of the plague, the pestilence. Not a soul was allowed outside the close for fear of spreading the disease. She was sad and lonely as her dolly was lost.
That's my dolly.
Saddened by the girl's plight, the film crew hastily purchased a small doll, placing it in the room to appease her soul. And ever since then, folk venturing down into this eerie enclave leave all manner of gifts for the dispirited child.
Well, obviously most children in Edinburgh in the 1640s spoke fluent Japanese. Hold on, something's happening. I'll consult my spirit guide.
Who was that sceptical bloke just there?
Of course, Edinburgh was dark and dingy in days long gone by. The old Norloch, Princes Street Gardens today, to the uninformed, was a stinking cesspit full of vegetable waste, animal offal, and of course, human deposit. This created a methane or marsh gas that would waft up and down the closes in the windy city of Edinburgh. Now, I'm sure, ladies and gentlemen, this would have contributed to a few zombie-like visitations.
In the name of the two-headed hobby horse, what the dickens are you doing polluting my eerie airwaves with your septic, skeptic creed of can't prove it doesn't exist dogma? Well, whoever you are, I'm sure you can't pick holes in this story. Baronet fears Pharaoh curse on family. Sir Alexander and Lady Seaton, residents in Lermont Gardens in the 1930s, returned from an expedition to Egypt with a macabre souvenir, a bone taken from a newly opened Egyptian tomb dating back to 3000 BC. Although advised against securing this ancient artefact, they promptly dismissed any stories of bad luck falling upon them, and even laughed heartily at the idea of a curse. However, on returning to Edinburgh, certain abnormal occurrences started to unfold. In the following 12-month period, Lady Seaton was twice seriously ill. A fire broke out in the family home, and friends staying in the house glanced upon a dark-robed figure drifting back and forth in the middle of the night. Curiously, a row of chimney pots crashed into the street below while Lady Seaton was poorly. Ornaments locked away at night were found unaccountably broken the very next morning. After witnessing these supernatural happenings, a housemaid in mortal fear handed in her notice. This story was recorded in the Scottish Daily Express in 1937 by a Mr. Cole, who took the bone away to conduct his own experiment, which I believe was entitled, "I wonder if anything will happen to me." Well, nothing happened in Mr. Cole's Haymarket flat on the first evening, but late on the second day he was rushed to the Royal Infirmary with a perforated appendix, which, believe you me, was a serious ailment in the 1930s. He survived to tell the tale.
Of course, there's a very appropriate word used in such cases. Coincidence. Mind you, what happened to the bone?
Ah, Thomas, do I detect a small smattering of interest? Well, Lord Seaton took the bone along to the psychical research people at Heriot Row and spoke to a packed audience, detailing his unearthly experiences. One particular medium, a Mrs. Bateman from London, grasped hold of the bone, started to shiver and shake violently, proclaiming,
Oh, dispose of this foul relic before the month is out. Oh, anybody who handles that evil remnant will be struck blind and will never see again.
An alarming prediction. Luckily, no one waited around to witness this portent of doom, and as such, there's no sinister punch to the climax of this odd story. The bone was thrown out in the rubbish.
Hocus pocus, mumbo jumbo. You'll be telling me next the bin men touched the bone, went blind, and could not see to collect their rubbish, so Lermont had no rubbish collected for 30 long years.
How dare you cast doubt on my narration? If you can't say anything sensible, don't say anything at all. Keep your chattering to yourself. Now, I must move on. The Kingdom of Fife. And if you decide to venture down below the cliffs at East Weems to the Weems Caves, you'll be in for a big surprise. You may be met by a 16th century woman called Mary Sibbald. Accused of stealing, she was sentenced to be flogged. Sadly, the shock of this brutal punishment killed her. Recently, a visitor snapped a photograph of the empty Cork Cave. However, when the film was developed, a woman could be clearly observed. Close by is Weems Castle, said to be haunted by a green lady. Green ladies and grey ladies are very common. Less frequent are pink ladies. Stirling is possessed by a pink lady dressed in a flowing silk gown. This is thought to be the wife of a downcast Scots soldier who died at the hands of Edward I of England. Apparently she returns looking for her long-lost husband and is best seen from Ladies' Rock between the castle and the church.
Bah, pink schmink, poppycock. A Victorian invention from a Stirling journalist.
Not to be outdone, the castle boasts a green lady too, thought to be a lady-in-waiting to Mary Queen of Scots, who in 1561 saved the Queen from being burned when the curtains around her bed went on fire. Many green ladies are roaming this land because the colour green is thought to be unlucky, and often the stories relate to untimely deaths.
Most ghosts seem to be women. Therefore, is it not more likely, at least to those with common sense, these are simply unconscious feminine figures within the male psyche seeking expression? I mean, what does that say to you?
Well,
let me answer that one for you. Who wrote most of the stories? Men. This is male fantasy land in times long past. Men weren't supposed to express feelings, and as such, women were the vessels for all types of projection, from witch to goddess.
In the name of all that is sacred and true, this petulance cannot continue. Look, I think it's about time you paid us a visit. I'll send a coach and 2 fine horses. We need to talk face to face. Where are you?
St Andrews?
Well, there's an irony. One of the most haunted places in the whole of this island. More spirits in St Andrews than I've had hot dinners. And let me tell you, salads aren't often on the Lyle menu. One choice yarn from the home of golf relates to a student residing in the university town in the 1960s. One evening, he started to scale the walls of the closed castle, presumably as a source of academic amusement. Glancing up, he noticed a cheerless figure clearly ambling from window to window. He initially thought, the custodian. His conclusion was tempered by the grim realization that the elderly figure was walking in an area of the castle no longer with any floors. Not far from St Andrews, legend states that treasure is buried in Largo Law. A mystical being appeared to a local shepherd and foretold,
If Auchendowney cock, Disney craw, and Balmain horn, Disney blaw, I'll show you where the gold mine is in Largo Law.
Inspired by possible riches, the shepherd asked his friend Tammy Norrie not to blow his horn and proceeded to kill all the cockerels in Auchendowney. Sadly, Tammy, for reasons only known to himself, blew his horn and died rooted to the spot. The visitant then reappeared and said,
Woe to the man that blew that horn, for out of that spot he shall ne'er be born.
and was never seen again.
There is some truth to this legend. As in 1819, a peddler, whilst digging sand near Largo Law, discovered various silver relics, including a suit of scale armour, complete with shield, sword handle and scabbard.
Oh, thanks, monk. Or can I call you mad? The mad monk who researched this programme states that in one particular library that he visited, there were 51 books on legends and 78 books on superstitions. We were very superstitious as children. It all started one day when we were out playing. By pure chance, we came across an old tome in the undergrowth. Ghosts, folk tales and superstitions was the title. Luckily, I could read. My brother John was less gifted, and sometimes I would stop reading just before the end of an exciting story.
And each year, on the 29th of May, Claypot's Castle, Dundee. Well, what happens? Come on, tell me what happens. I'm not telling you.
Ah, the good old days, when everyone was happy. Even our mother would expound tall tales from this book to send us to sleep at night.
A spectral coach is seen on Hogmanay near Aberdeen. It belongs to Laird Alexander Skene, who died in 1724. He studied black magic and witchcraft and did not have a shadow. 4 imps, a crow, a hawk, a magpie and a jackdaw followed his every evil intent. He is said to take the birds to the churchyard every New Year's Eve and feed them on the bodies of newly buried, unbaptised babies. That's a lovely wee story.
One more.
Oh, well, okay, one more. Clay Potts Castle. It is said on the 29th of May. Good night, boys. 1 hour sleep before midnight is worth 2 after. Early to bed, early to rise. Speech is silver, but silence is golden.
Mum filled us full of proverbs, like father like son, old habits die hard, a man who's born in a stable is a horse, that kind of thing.
Mr. Doubting Thomas, to see you, sir.
Show him in. Wait a minute, I don't have a butler. Now sit down. You can take part in this programme when I say so. No more interruptions. Only speak when you're spoken to. There's none so deaf as those who can't hear. If you can't ride 2 horses, you shouldn't be in a circus. Perth. Hunting Tower, or the House of Ruthven as it was called before 1600, was a lordly residence for about 300 years. A section of the building is known as the Maiden's Leap, between which a young lady vaulted 9 feet 4 inches to return from her lover's apartment. The Green Lady of Hunting Tower Castle is a helpful manifestation who assists those in trouble, including in the past a little boy who was seriously ill in a nearby cottage. His mother left him to fetch medicine, but on her return the boy was sitting up in bed quite well. He spoke of the bonny lady in a green dress with pretty sleeves who had stroked his head and made him better. Not far away is McGurney Castle, which houses the ghost of a lady of 2 halves. The castle once belonged to the clan Menzies, Mingus, and the chief's beautiful wife attracted a lot of attention from the local gentry. One night, in a fiery fit of jealous rage, he murdered his wife. To hide the crime, Menzies, Mingus, severed the body in 2, burying 1 half in a grave and the other under the floor. The upper torso haunts the tower and the lower section wanders the corridor. During renovation work in 1849, an upper body skeleton was found under the floor. Perth has a famous ghost too. Bonnie Prince Charlie haunts an old hotel who wished to remain anonymous.
Yes, Prince Charles Edward Stuart also apparently haunts Trackware House in the Borders. The Bonnie Prince used to haunt the County Hotel Dumfries, now demolished. How convenient. And no doubt Charlie would haunt a few more places if you were to look it up. Busy ghost, eh?
Doubting Thomas, I believe all your tarot cards may not be on the table. You seem to have a few fables up your sleeve. For a non-believer, you've a fund of wraith-like knowledge. Do I detect the worm may be turning?
Well, I, like you as a child, was filled full of hobgoblin stories and fancy folklore. The Green Lady of 5e Castle, the Green Lady of Achergill Tower, the Green Lady at the Castle of May near John O'Groats. Green this, green that, stories were all the same to me. Phantom pipers, phantom drummers, phantom regiments. Not one ghost, but a whole army. Come on, far-fetched or what? Take Culloden. Jacobites defeated by the Duke of Cumberland's army in 1746 are still said to roam the area. Oh, and Bonnie Prince Charlie is there too. that was one place I forgot to mention. However, although doubting by name, and more often than not doubting by nature, I did recently have a singular and uncommon experience whilst rambling on the hilly slopes of Ben Macdui. I saw through the mist, to my amazement, a figure standing nearly 12 feet tall. I, of course, presume this to be my shadow cast onto a cloud resting close to the tip of the mountain. I then heard the sounds of musical instruments and drums. In all likelihood, I thought this nothing more than the groaning and thunder of the floes as the temperature dropped and the ice froze harder. However, on my return, to satisfy the curiosity gradually gnawing away in my now restless mind, I paid a visit to a local library where I discovered, to my immense surprise, that several other people, including the late celebrated J.N. Colley of King's College London, had witnessed similar odd events. The so-called Grey Man of Ben Macdui.
There you are. The proof is in the eating of the pudding. Obviously now a paranormal convert. Have you joined the other side?
No, not fully. No, not maybe. In fact, no, not at all.
Oh. Right, well, if you don't mind, I'll continue. The Sandwood Sailor. Sandwood Bay is a 7-mile stretch of sand and dunes a few miles south of Cape Wrath. In the 1930s, a crofter from the nearest village set out with a horse-drawn cart to collect some driftwood. Suddenly, the figure of a sailor complete with brass buttons and cap appeared from nowhere. Shocked and dumbfounded, they fled in fright from the bay. This was not the only appearance of the Sandwood Sailor. Sometime later, a Kinlochbervie farm worker searching for lost sheep in the Sandwood area saw a broad burly stranger with a well-weathered face, sprouting thick black whiskers. He had the salty air of a sailor. The farmer gazed on in stunned silence as the Sandwood ghost faded into the shadow of the rocks.
Liar, liar, pence on fire. Well, I'd take that story with a pinch of sea salt. Ghosts belong to Victorian spinsters, Boris Karloff, and creepy old houses with clinking, clanking chains.
Look, rather than you sitting there insulting the viewer, why don't you take part? Look, step into a pair of sturdy boots, pick up the trail of a few bogies and banshees, and relay your findings back to us. A sort of roving reporter.
Well, that sounds interesting. Pressman for the Phantoms, you say? OK. Fare thee well. Where am I going?
Mull. Destination Mull. The Isle of Mull. When we were boys, we were sent packing up the west coast of Scotland, in fact all the way to Lairg, to stay with our Uncle Clapperton. He was a great storyteller. He'd always start with the words,
"Did I ever tell you the story about the old manse at Lairg? 2 girls were playing in the dining room when they heard a knock knock at the door. Knock knock, knock knock. Upon answering the door, they beheld a tall, thin man, attired in a long, dark robe, with a dog collar. The girl scrambled up the stairs to tell the resident minister a preacher was looking for him. Upon returning to the door, the preacher had vanished. Boo! Boo!
Boo!
Oh! There was no sign of the preacher, despite the wide open countryside all around the manse. In a state of fear, the girls quickly sketched a picture of the old man, and the minister, somewhat aghast, immediately recognised the likeness to the Reverend Thomas Mackay, who had died 21 years earlier, before either of the two girls were born.
Do you know the Claypot's Castle story, Uncle?
No, but did I ever tell you about Glencoe? Well, King William III had offered a pardon to all Highland clans who had previously fought against him or against each other, on condition that they all swore allegiance with the king before a certain deadline. The failure to comply with this demand on time meant that on the 13th of February 1692, a planned act of government extermination led by Captain Robert Campbell was to execute hundreds of MacDonalds spread over a distance of 10 square miles. However, general incompetence meant that only 30 or so clan members were killed, but of the 300 or so who escaped, many are believed to have died of cold and starvation.
This ultimate breach of Highland hospitality gave special notoriety to the massacre of Glencoe. Eerie pipes and phantasmal members of the Clan MacDonald have occasionally been seen and heard on this spine-chilling anniversary. I'm hopeful we can now make contact with our roving reporter, Doubting Thomas. Thomas, can you hear me? Thomas, can you hear me?
Yes, I can indeed. I can reveal exclusive to Ghosts of Scotland, this fine Isle of Mull has none other than a headless horseman. Apparently the body of Ewan MacLean of Lochbuie, who during a fierce clan battle with the MacLeans of Duart lost his head to a full swing of a mighty claymore. According to unconfirmed reports, his headless body held fast in the horse's stirrups, an unnerving sight as his steed proceeded to gallop for 2 miles along the River Wissa. After his untimely death, he returned on several occasions to haunt his enemies, the MacLeans of Duart. This story inspired Sir Walter Scott to write in his now famous Lady of the Lake. Don't my poetry says? Sounds too had come in midnight blast of charging steed careering fast along Bentalla's shingly side where mortal horsemen ne'er might ride.
Thanks, Thomas. Riveting report. I think his tone's changing. Now you haste yourself down to the borders, Melrose Abbey. I believe there's a monk to be found. In the context of ghouls, when the word underground is mentioned, we tend to think of graves, tombs, or burial chambers. However, in Glasgow, the underground station at Shields Road is the tragic dwelling place of Adelaide Simpson, the Grey Lady, who late one Saturday evening in July 1922 was to draw her last living breath. Adelaide had intended to return home by subway after visiting her mother with her young daughter. Alerted to a piercing scream, Station Master Robert McIntosh turned to witness the woman and child sprawled on the rails of the inner circle line. In desperation, he jumped onto the track, frantically signalling the driver of the oncoming train to stop. Although saving the child, his heroism could not prevent the first carriage passing over poor Adelaide. In recent years, workmen repairing the track in the tunnel have experienced the sounds of echoing footsteps and eerie flashing lights. The next story was told to me by my brother John while in prison. As wayward young lads, we were always in trouble. Well, boys will be boys. Culminating in the robbery of cattle dealer Matthew Boyd relieving him of £100, a fortune in 1810. We were apprehended, imprisoned, and I eventually was sentenced to be hanged. Brother John, though, had the sense, or was it the nonsense, to plead insanity, and eventually was deported to New South Wales. On our last night together in the cell, John sought sweet revenge. He'd been waiting for an opportune moment to avenge the times I read him ghost stories and never quite finished them. On this sombre occasion, his intention was not to cheer me up, but to wind me up.
Dead men tell no tales. A creaking door hangs longest. Death levels all men. Life reveals the eminent. Hang a thief when he's young, and he'll no steal when he's old.
John, where's your respect for the soon-to-be deceased?
Laugh when the world laughs with you. Weep, and you weep alone.
Little things please little minds.
Misfortunes never come singly.
This went on for ages. Then he decided to even the score by narrating an incomplete tale.
Carlton Castle houses Ayrshire's Bluebeard, Sir John Cathcart. He courted many fair ladies in his time, each of whom he wed, but not for long. Quickly growing tired of marital commitments, he threw each of his spouse over Game's Loup cliffs. Perhaps even 7 women fell prey to his fatal charms, until May Colleen. You'll never know the ending of that story, brother.
Until his final bride, May Colleen, threw him over the cliffs, and his ghost is still heard screaming in the castle. Sorry, brother, I knew that one. But look, to show you there's no hard feelings, I'll tell you the Claypot's Castle story.
A castle story? I love castle stories.
Every year,
Annually?
on the 29th of May,
May, June-ish?
there is
There is? There is? There is what, brother? The ending. Brother, the ending! The ending! The ending!
You probably never ever heard the end of that story. I miss him, though. No doubt there's relations staying in Australia today. I wonder how Thomas is getting on. Thomas, are you there yet?
No, not yet.
Oh well, time for a couple of quirky fillers. Let me continue the steady trickle of strange happenings. Just north of Dumfries is Drumlanrig Castle, and this place is haunted by an ape. That's what it says here. An ape. Known as the Yellow Monkey of Drumlanrig, this ghostly creature was witnessed by Princess Alice, Duchess of Gloucester. Thomas, are you there yet?
No, not yet.
Oh, well, this story was told in Sir Walter Scott's The Bride of Lammer Moor, the setting, Baldoon Castle. Janet Dalrymple was forced to marry Sir David Dunbar, as her favoured partner was penniless. When the bride and groom were alone together, she was mortally wounded. It's unclear whether she was murdered or committed suicide. However, the ghost is seen on their wedding anniversary wearing a blood-stained wedding dress.
I'm still trying to fathom that chronicle out. I mean, I've read several endings, Bride kills groom and dies insane. Groom kills bride and dies insane. Or preferred partner kills groom and doesn't die insane or sane. In fact, doesn't die at all.
All right, there's a few variations. Tales can change over the years as they're told and retold. You know, like Chinese whispers. Anyway, have you reached Melrose yet?
Have I itch smell nose?
No. Have you reached Melrose yet?
No, I'm not at Melrose. I'm at Abbotsford, the dwelling place of Sir Walter Scott. Scott's collection of historical relics reads like a comprehensive A to Z of memorabilia. Rob Roy's broadsword, dirk, sporran, and gun. King James's hunting bottle. 2 Highland backswords recovered from the bloody field of Culloden. I can go on, quite incredible. A model of the skull of Robert the Bruce. A lock of Prince Charlie's hair. Oh, here's one. Part of the condemned cell door, acquired from the old Tolbooth prison, Edinburgh. That'll interest you, Adam.
That may well be the case, but does Abbotsford House have a ghost?
No, not to my knowledge.
Well, what are you doing there then?
Hold your horses, so to speak. I've an interesting story to tell. Apparently the horses bearing Sir Walter Scott's coffin to burial in Dryborough Abbey suddenly stopped at his favourite view. Today, the scenic site is christened Scott's View. This is Doubting Thomas at the enchanting surroundings of Abbotsford House, reporting back to the cosy confines of the inner sanctum. Is that a cut?
Yeah, that'll be alright.
Oh, thank goodness. He's a high-spirited spook, that Adam Lyle. Do you know the horses suddenly stopped as the driver pulled the reins? I'm not sure, yeah. Anyway, yeah. Scott's View.
Right. Well, it looks like I'm telling you about the ruins of Melrose Abbey.
When distant Tweed is heard to rave, and owlet to hoot o'er the dead man's grave, then go, but go alone the while. Then view St. David's ruined pile, and home returning soothly swear, was ever seen so sad and fair.
Arguably the finest of the Scottish border abbeys, dating from 1136. A demon monk haunts the cloister garth and chapter house. He floats above the ground, upright, in a very proper manner. The monk was said to have broken his vows, adopted vampiristic tendencies, and led a life of lust and gluttony. He was executed at, believe it or not, Scott's View. Not far away at Jedburgh Castle, an angel of death appeared on the wedding night of Alexander III and foretold the king's imminent demise. 6 months later, in torrential rain, the king was thrown from his horse over Ha Craig Point, Kinghorn Fife, and died on the rocks below. Do you know that all these stories make my heart yearn to materialise elsewhere and visit the lifeless souls for myself? Borthwick Castle, Midlothian, a twin-towered baronial keep built in 1430, visited by Mary Queen of Scots and besieged by Oliver Cromwell. The castle is reputedly tormented by Anne Grant, a peasant woman who, beguiled by Lord Borthwick, was soon with child. To conceal the scandal of an illegitimate heir, she was murdered. Her ghost still besets the Red Room today. The folk tale here is hidden deep beneath what is now Gladhouse Reservoir. Hewlett Ha was the name of the bleak, gloomy farm, and Old Hewlett was the name of the forlorn farmer. According to legend, the miserly old farmer murdered his wife and Irish manservant, buried their bodies barely a stone's throw away from his own croft, and cunningly explained that their passionate affair had driven them across land and sea to America. Old Hewlett's devious act created little suspicion until locals witnessed occasional sightings of wife and manservant walking together in the distance. Strangely, when approached, the couple simply faded into thin air. The mystery deepened when Old Hewlett's farm animals were afflicted with sickness and blight, gradually dying one after the other. It was not until the corpses of wife and manservant were unearthed during the burial of his livestock that the villainy of Old Hewlett was confirmed. Justice, however, was not served, as the wretched old farmer eluded the authorities, disappearing, never to be seen again. The stonework of the now desolate farm was initially used in the construction of dry stone dikes. Today, all that remains to the grim testament of Hewlett Ha is Gladhouse Reservoir.
One curious part to our story. When the bodies of the lovers were exhumed and finally interred, the phantoms of Hewlett Ha vanished for good.
Come in, make yourself at home. This chocolate cake is simply divine.
Are you still scoffing at my tales of woe and intrigue? I think it's about time to convert you for good. There's a story nearby, has lots of details, been verified by the Scottish Society for Psychical Research, and incidentally, someone's booked on the tour. Once a ghost, always a ghost. Business before pleasure. Come on, this way. Described as a short, dark, stocky man, Angus Roy was a sailor, sailing from the port town of Leith, all over the world. Returning from a long voyage, he had a most unfortunate accident. He fell from a high mast, crashed down onto the deck of the ship. The only reason he survived was the fact that he landed on some coiled ropes. He became a cripple and couldn't go back to sea. He moved from Leith to the old town of Edinburgh here, but life wasn't the same. The old town children used to make fun of him, call him all sorts of names. Eventually, on his deathbed, in August 1840, he vowed that he'd come back to this area and take his revenge on the occupants. If you were to speak to the people that still stay in this area, they'll tell you, on nights just like this one, the sullen-faced Angus Roy can still sometimes be seen.
You're going before the... Okay, we're off then. This is it. Take two.
Action! Well, the esteemed Sir Walter, fascinated by the supernatural, describes a ghost in this very area. It's a grey, grizzled...
One more.
I think we've got that, yes.
Good.
Go.
Mary, yeah. Oh dear.
Right.
Part of the... No, I just can't. It's very messy, isn't it? Here's one. Part of the... Just can't say that word. Part of the criminal's condition. Sorry. Took the wrong step there. That would be low.
Right.
All right. Just keep going. That's. Here's one. Part of the... You put me off there. That was you. That wasn't right, was it? No. Here's one. Part of the criminal's condemned cell. Criminal. Shouldn't be putting it in there.
No, come.
Sorry.
Alright, turn it over.
We're aiming for perfection here.
Woe to the man that blew that horn, for out of that spot he shall ne'er be born.